So, Laura, you were referring to one Henry Quinn.
Yeah.
Who makes an appearance very early on in this season. We were speculating on the primer episode about whether or not Joe's son was going to play a role in this season. Was it going to be something where they flashed forward and they aged him up and he came back to interact with his father in some way? But now Kate and Joe have Henry living with him, which was a surprise to me. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, same. I also just wasn't expecting to see like a whole ass child. I guess in my head I was like, he's a baby, right?
Yeah. There's a little time jump though, right?
Yeah,
like,
there is.
It's like, yeah. But he's still older than I thought he would be because he looks about 10, right?
Yeah, like 8 to 10.
I thought maybe 5, you know?
And he's in...
We didn't a lot for the London years.
Elementary school?
Like that, so, yeah.
Yeah, somewhere around there. I mean, I don't have kids, so for me, if someone's under the age of like 12, I have no idea. So I probably shouldn't be guessing.
Laura's like, that's a baby.
Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, truthfully, when I see a 10-year-old, that is a baby. But...
Yeah, that's fair. That's
so
fair. But yeah, I mean, like, you're right. It seems like they got custody of him very easy. But I guess on the other side of it, it's that money talks. And that's a big theme of this season too.
So they talk about how they basically uprooted him from the family he was living with, the two people that Joe left him with, to bring him to New York. And that has to be somewhat confusing for a young child. One of the things that's so interesting about Henry is that he grounds Joe. And I think that as things do start to spiral, the one thing that he probably can't stand at the end of the day is being separated from his son, and for his son to have this opinion of him, which we start to see evolve through the episodes, that he's actually a bad person and that he killed love and that he's treating Kate poorly and who knows what other things are being fed to him. So it's tough to see Henry used as a plot device in this way.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting choice for them also to make Henry aware of the fact that Kate is not his biological mother. Because I think a lot of times, like, when something like this happens, the knee-jerk reaction is like, we'll just lie to the kid and be like, oh, we're your mom and dad. But he, like, very clearly knows Joe's his dad, Kate's his mom now, but his birth mom died.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and if he didn't know, he was going to find out from his cousin.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's true. My God, this family.
But very interestingly, I think we're meant to be teased in a way at the start of the season that Henry does start to demonstrate certain Joe qualities. We mentioned his cousin, Henry punching out his cousin for smack talking his birth mother is one incident that comes to mind. But then at the dinner where pretty much the whole family is present, minus dearly departed Big Bob, Henry tosses a knife at Reagan for pretty much doing much of the same, right? Smack talking love. So
yeah, it was a butter knife, right? Like
it was, but I mean,
like,
he had the presence of mind to go in the kitchen and grab the knife and throw it at her.
Yeah. It was just not a good look in hindsight, but also Reagan was being insane. Like, talk about batshit family members. Like, she went in guns blazing, and it really is because she wants to be CEO. So she's taking that out on Kate in the best way she knows how.
Yeah, by like threatening to sue them to pay for her daughter's rhinoplasty that she's gonna have to have. Right. It's like, what, your 7-year-old needs a rhinoplasty? Okay.
But remember how quickly Kate says, done. That wasn't even a thought. Like the
it's
cost
like
of
so
it.
normal. Yeah. But no, Reagan wanted more than that. She wanted to eclipse her sister. Like you said at the top, it's the classic power struggle.
Did you think though that Reagan was in danger? Because let's face it, I'm drawing upon our Harry Potter literary analysis. She gets a knife thrown at her. It's probably not the best forebearer of things to come.
Yeah. It's definitely a red herring.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not encouraging. And you can definitely, I think when you're watching this show, you can usually count on the person who is like causing the loudest, like most obtrusive events,
banging the pots
in Joe's life to be the one that he targets, because he's like, I can't have the kind of attention on me that you're trying to put on me, so time to die.
I like how he justifies it so matter-of-factly, too.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not even like, you're right, it's not even that, this and this happened. It's usually like, you're threatening to blow things up, and I don't appreciate that, so you're not long for this world. But I think that, like, as soon as she was basically saying that she wanted them to say that they were bad parents, and that's why Henry was falling to the wayside, there was that like murderous look that Joe gave, and I was like, oh, that's it, she's done. I just didn't know how it was going to happen. But as soon as he, like, Penn Badgley does a really good job of kind of like flipping that switch, and there's just something that happens in his facial expression where you just realize it's like, oh, this is like Joe Goldberg the killer, and not Joe Goldberg the seemingly nice guy anymore.
Yeah.
It's very Jekyll and Hyde.
It really is. And he is so good, because I have to say, I am normally not a fan of voiceovers. For whatever reason, they just don't tend to work for me. But Joe's voiceovers really work in this show. I actually kind of struggled with Bronte's voiceovers, because I was like, it didn't feel so much like they were being acted. Like, she's a great actress. Like, when she's on screen, she's great. But her voiceovers felt like very monotone, whereas Joe brings a lot of like character and intrigue to his voiceovers. So that's why they work for me. But yeah, he is really good. That's just to say that I think Penn Badgley has done a really great job in this role.
Yeah, there is something to be said for that shift that we get, especially at the very end of the season with Bronte doing the voiceover, because it's almost like the message is being sent is like Joe doesn't get the last word, even though he does get the last word, like physical word, but the perspective has now shifted, and you have somebody like Bronte who is in the driver's seat. So just touching a little bit more on the family dynamic. I know we mentioned Reagan earlier and talked about how she just got a knife thrown in her face, but do we want to talk any more about the siblings, about the twins, what happens with them, that whole crazy dynamic? Because Joe, to go off of what you were saying, Laura, he does want to go after Reagan. He kind of asks for permission initially, but then takes it upon himself to take her out of the equation, and oops, he ends up kidnapping the wrong twin.
That was a big oops. I think that's the first big Joe slip up we've ever seen, and it does put him in a really interesting predicament.
It's essentially the hole he can't dig out of, because I feel like the Uncle Bob situation, he probably could have worked his way around, but once he got the wrong twin, ball game was over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
It also just kind of shows how how badly he can manipulate somebody, because obviously we see him manipulate multiple women over the course of this series, mostly into believing that he's a good guy, right? but I don't think we've ever seen him manipulate somebody to kill someone else. Like that's a whole new level. And the fact that he's able to have one twin kill the other and prey on Maddie's insecurities and Reagan's like anger issues, basically, and turn those two things against each other is like an entirely new level of messed up.
Yeah, I mean, he was literally goading her. He was outside the cage, and he was just like, come on, I hear the way she talks to you. You can't like that very much, do you? And, you know, he manipulates her into doing that, and then he blackmails her for it because he has footage of her killing her twin sister.
And he ends up causing, like, basically a nervous breakdown in her because she starts, like, she almost like starts having split personality disorder.
Because, yeah, she's playing herself and she's playing Reagan because nobody can know that Reagan has gone missing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a convenient cover that they're twins, but you can only carry that charade on for so long, especially since the whole reason this mix-up happened in the first place is because Maddie was having an affair with Reagan's husband. And that's the moment that Joe walks in on, wrongly assumes that he has the right twin and he doesn't. So yeah, I mean, there's just already a lot of baggage in that situation. And I mean, Joe knows baggage, so I guess he knows how to exploit it, but...
And there's also the little nugget that Maddie carried Reagan's daughter to term. And I'm not sure how public knowledge that is, even amongst the family. I don't feel like it comes up very often.
It doesn't seem like it was. It seemed like it was more between the trio of the husband and the twins.
Yeah, because that would have been a big scandal. And I mean, I'm sure it happens all the time, like in real life.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems weird.
Yeah.
And especially with the affair going on in the background, like it makes sense that they would want that kept hush-hush for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. And see, the thing is, like, it'd be one thing if it was like Reagan just couldn't for whatever reason, like she just couldn't conceive, or like she had some kind of like medical condition that prohibited her from doing it. But the stated reason was literally that she just didn't want to put her own body through the physical changes of pregnancy. So instead she was like, hey sis, like, you do this for me.
Yeah.
And then of course her sister do what?
I was going to say she gets harsher than Joe does because, I mean, Joe berates her to try and goad her, but Reagan takes it to a whole new level. Because then she says, she's like, oh, we knew you could die, but we didn't care because you're expendable.
Especially since Maddie, of the two of them, she is the one who has a chronic health condition. She has diabetes. And so it's like, granted, like, that's a disease that is easier to manage nowadays, but I know that in pregnancy, those risks can really double and sometimes quadruple. So it's like kind of crazy that she was willing to not only take the chance on her sister's life, but take the chance that her unborn child might not make it either. You know? It's pretty fucked up.
It is. And so Reagan becomes the first victim of the cage of season 5. Certainly not the first victim of season 5, but we should have done a count. I forgot to keep track of how many people snuff it in this episode.
I bet we can find that quickly. I'm going to Google.
Mm-hmm. Well,
carry on. I will update y'all.
While we do that, do we feel like we've touched on Henry enough? I mean, clearly he's not in the most ideal of situations. Yeah. I don't even know that I like the way it wraps for him, because I was honestly shocked to see Kate at the end of this season still alive.
Yeah, I thought she was toast.
And
literally,
for reasons already stated, she's not the best person in the world, and she's gotten away with quite a bit herself. And so for her not to get any sort of ramifications for the things that she's done, but I guess that goes to the point that was raised about money talks, money is influence, money is power, and she's probably covered up a lot of what's gone down.
Yeah, for
sure.
Yeah,
with Henry, I think that, and we can circle back to this too at the end, because I think he really does drive the final stake in Joe. But I do think that, like, that's one of those instances in which time will tell. It's possible that Kate will really see surviving for what it is, which is a genuine opportunity to turn over a new leaf and not relapse. And so maybe in that case, she nurtures him enough so that he doesn't ever want for affection, which is really what Joe's downfall comes down to in the end, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of downfalls, according to Gemini, in the final season, Joe's responsible for the deaths of Uncle Bob, Reagan, Dane, Clayton, and a police officer. So actually not that many people.
That's true.
For some reason, the number was bigger in my head. And I think, and I mean, granted, I don't want to be crass about it. Not that many people. I thought it was a larger number than that. Yeah. But I think it's because over the course of the series, he has killed so many people.
And 5 is appropriate for this season.
Yeah, true. I wonder if they did that in the other seasons. They align like the number of deaths to the season number. Yep. Ask ChatGPT.
It would know the answer for sure. Well, in addition to returning to New York, we also returned to Mooney's bookstore, where we spent much of season 1. So it is only natural Joe's history with Beck takes center stage, though it does so through Beck's former student turned catfisher, Bronte, whose name we've dropped a couple times here. Her real name is Louis Flannery. Were we suspicious of Bronte from day one?
Yes, but yeah. I just thought she was like a super fan of his.
Yeah, at first, I more thought that she was like a psycho, like true fan junkie. Very similar to like the letters that we see Joe receives at the end from his admirers. That's kind of what I thought she was. It was very clear to me that she knew who he was from the beginning. I know she tried to play it off like she didn't, but like, girl, come on. But yeah, the whole the catfishing twist, I did not see that coming.
Yeah, I think the other red herring too was that she was like so into this idea of like the dark romance. That was like her thing, and I thought that was actually a really clever plot device that they brought in from the real world, because that's like, you know, a genre that very much is trending in romance right now. And it was just a really clever piece of storytelling to kind of, you know, throw something in that is heavily being discussed online in literary circles. So yeah, but that for sure, like coupled with the fact that he's just like a notable person now, I just kind of thought she was like kind of one of those crazy fans. I didn't think that it was going to be more than that. So when we got that big reveal at the end of, I think season 4 is when that all starts, it was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, and something I loved about this, I love the connection of Bronte or Louise actually being a former student of Beck's, and how what really kind of kicked off her suspicions of what had happened to Beck was reading the book that Joe got posthumously published for her, and thinking like, I know her style, and I can tell that somebody else had their fingers in this. It was like the perfect crime hidden in plain sight under a best-selling title, and no one need like think too deeply into it because it's just a book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And anything to be made of her name. I'm not as familiar with Emily Bronte and her work.
That, to me, it wasn't a red flag that, you know, she had moved to New York and changed her name to Bronte. I feel like that kind of tracks as somebody that comes from a small town that wants to reinvent themselves, you know, especially Ohio. It's always, there's so many people from Ohio, because I didn't realize that Ohio is only like 8 hours away, you know, from New York until I moved there. And like so many transplants that I was meeting, they're like, oh, I drove out from Ohio. I was like, how far is that? Oh, that's actually not that far. So I just feel like it's plausible that somebody would want to change their names to make themselves seem more interesting when they get to the big city for the first time.
And that's such a young person thing to do too. And like the move to like pick a famous author's surname as your
or to change like the spelling of your name to something more interesting.
Although I want to show y'all something really interesting that I just noticed, and I want to see if you pick up on this too. So I'm going to if I can figure out my life, I'm going to share my screen. I guess it's this Chrome tab. Okay. No, this is not the one that we want. Hang on. I swear to God, this is very relevant, and I think we're all going to have some thoughts on it. Okay. So I looked up Emily Bronte.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do y'all think she looks like anyone?
She looks like her. Yeah.
She looks like Bronte.
Her. Yeah.
She straight up looks like her. That's crazy.
That is crazy. Yeah. To that point, I do.
That's so funny.
Micah, you were saying that you don't know very much about Emily Bronte. I do know that she wrote Wuthering Heights, and that is like what are like the classic romances. And I think even Joe quotes that the one famous line that everybody always forgets is Emily Bronte, which is whatever our souls are made of, his and mine are the same. That's like used a lot to talk about like ground romances even today. So like it makes sense, like, you know, in the grand scheme of things.
It does.
Yeah. I don't know if she thought too much about it from that angle, but it was a great bait for Joe, because that's exactly what he was looking for, is that he was looking for somebody that would accept all of him in the end. But how was she supposed to know that in hindsight?
It does definitely seem like a Netflix thing to do, because I'm remembering back, had either of you seen the show Mindhunter?
Yes. Oh my God.
So
fabulous show.
They actually cast people who looked exactly like the serial killers who were a part of that show. So this seems very much similar to that. So
yeah, feels there are lots of nice little touches like that in this show. I feel like we could almost do like an Easter eggs like separate discussion if we ever wanted to.
For sure. But just in terms of Bronte's story arc, she really does struggle with her feelings for Joe. This is not just a simple catfish, I gotcha. There's moments where she really questions what it is that she's doing. And I think it goes pretty much up to that final episode, maybe the penultimate episode, because it's not until she has that conversation with Marianne that things really click for her, right? Because she ends up saving Joe from the fire, and I would love to ask the question to you both: do we think she saves him not because she wants to save his life, but because she wants to make sure he pays for everything that he's done? Like, is it too easy for Joe to die inside a burning Mooney's bookstore, and that's the end of Joe Goldberg? Does she do it more so because now he's got to face what he's done? and spend the rest of his life in jail?
It's a good question.
Yeah, I think it's less about facing what he's done and more about the fact that she wants to honor Beck and wants the truth of what happened to her out there. Because as far as anybody knows, she killed herself, right? Isn't that how he paints it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, the whole reason she gets wrapped up in all this is because she's trying to clear her name in a way, and also give her true legacy as a result of this book that she really didn't write because Joe had his fingerprints all over it. So I don't think we've really talked about that, but what did you guys think of her actually having secretly been teaming up with people that were somehow connected to Joe's past killings in certain ways? Like you mentioned Clayton being one of his kills, Laura, that turns out that he's Dr. Nikki's stepson or son or something like that. So he has a personal vendetta too. And he's kind of posing as Bronte's abusive ex-boyfriend to try and go Joe into activating into this killer and stuff. And I wasn't personally expecting them to go the TikTok true crime route, but it again makes sense in the landscape that we live in today.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also doing the TikTok interview with the influencer what's her name from SNL, who did that. She was so good.
Yeah, it's what is her name?
Yeah, the TikTok influencer who what?
Is it Chloe? Is her name Chloe?
I think you're right, actually.
Chloe
and it's to me, these were some of the most satisfying scenes because Joe kind of makes an ass of himself in front of millions of people, and he totally deserves it. I don't know if y'all paused to read any of the comments that they were showing on that live stream of the interview, but they were so funny and honestly fully captured the way that people behave online now.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Some of them were still thirsting over him a couple of times. And you know what I loved too was, to your point about the interview, Laura, how quickly the mob mentality changes, which is something that anybody that exists on the internet has probably seen in real time, where they go into this interview being oh, no sympathy for this guy. And then all of a sudden they're I feel bad for him.
I can fix him. My favorite was seeing Nicki Minaj say alleged, but he's a 10.
Oh, yeah.
So funny. So funny. But yeah, I mean, even it was funny because Maddie was the one that set Joe up with this interview. And of course, she's in PR. Mm-hmm. And she's like, hey, there's a really easy playbook for someone like you to follow, which is just don't admit guilt for anything, but say you're sorry. And if you don't do anything else, don't cry. Please don't cry. And then, of course, he has, an emotional breakdown in front of millions of people who are doing things oh, he's crashing out, or he really thinks he's cooking right now.
Yeah.
Which was all really good.
And to bring it
it's
back
good to see him exposed in front of this digital platform for once.
And I was going to say really quickly, to bring it back to something that you said right at the top of the show, even Maddie knows that he'll be fine because he's a conventionally attractive white man.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that makes me think of something Marianne says to Bronte. And I think it was when they were talking in Mooney's, well, it's still on fire, but they're just sitting there chatting. And she says something along the lines of we have to have the fantasies of men like Joe in order to deal with the reality of men like Joe. And I was like, oof, that hit. But they really, I think, did use this episode as a way to reframe the narrative and make it about Joe's victims and less about Joe.
Yeah, because you do have, in that particular episode, him, until he rips the spare key out of his arm, locked in the cage. And on the outside, you have Marianne, you have Nadia, you have Kate, and let's also mention like the shock value of Marianne being alive, because Joe did not know that they pulled a fast one on him in season 4. But to be confronted with all of that, and it's very, symbolic that he's the one in the cage this time with the 3 of them on the outside. There's other thoughts racing through his head of past lovers and others that he has murdered. But I just felt like, and maybe it's because he's just not on his game, like the way that they caught him, the way that they entrapped him in order to get him in the cage in the first place, where he was tailing Kate, or who he thought was Kate, was just so like, I don't know, like not Joe.
You don't think it was like, I think the reason I forgave it a little bit, because I agree, like it is weird to see him so off his game, but I almost forgave it because of the fact that they really put him through like basically his version of extreme situations. Like he was so obsessed with making sure that his son was okay, that his son believed him. Like that was the one thing that mattered the most to him, that it just kind of felt like he wasn't, and also like that he wanted to talk to Henry so badly to make sure that was the case, that he then got sloppy. And that's why he didn't think, oh, this is a Kate double. That potentially, like, Kate's smarter than this. And also it's like, and in part is it's arrogance, because he expects her to leave one stone unturned.
That's fair.
Yeah, and she deliberately did that. We see
because
her.
She knows him.
Yeah. But yeah, I think also because at that point she had gone back to England. She took Henry with her. And so I think he was trying to, first of all, do something to kind of shake the nest and shake her out and make her come home, which mission accomplished with getting Maddie arrested. And yeah, I think from there it's like desperation and probably him feeling a sense that like this is all coming apart at the seams, and and really like the circumstances are closing in on him. I don't know, it kind of felt like they made an effort this season to show how much of a fucking chump this guy can be. Like, he definitely thinks very highly of himself. And I think this was the season of, oh, okay, you think you're all that. Well,
in fairness, he has a pretty good track record up until this point.
Yeah. And so it did take, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, well, really 4 as soon as Bronte gets to the program, like 4 ex-victims to take him down. So
totally. But I still believe that, the situation with his son was the ultimate undoing for him.
Mm-hmm.
Take nothing away from, Kate and Nadia and Marianne and Bronte. I do think, without them, he's not behind bars, but I think that the love that he does, and I think he does love his son in the true sense here, not his perversion of it. But I do think that is one of the major reasons why he ends up getting caught in this season.
Yeah, it's a combination, I think, of that and then like really wanting to believe that there's one person out there that can match his freak, and he really thinks that's Bronte. Like she plays him for a fiddle.
She debates it too.
Yeah,
for a while.
And that's part of the reason why it's believable, to your point. Like,
yep.
And also why he keeps excusing why she's so fidgety in like that last race to the finish line that we get when he's like, we're going to run away together. And she goes with him, and he has no idea that it's because, like, she's fidgety because she has an ulterior motives. He just thinks, of course she's worried. Like, why wouldn't she be? I almost died. And I'm the love of her life.
I would be bereft if the love of my life almost died in a burning building.
And she's still shaking.
She saved me.
Yeah. Well, and he does wrestle with the idea of whether or not she is to be believed at multiple times, right? Like, he does a couple different things though that I think are interesting. But I agree that getting pulled from the burning building is probably the thing that solidifies it for him, that she does actually care about him. All right, well, we're going to talk about whether or not we were satisfied with all the different character endings, including Joe himself, but we have to take a quick break first, and we'll be right back after this.